Hello and welcome back to the X-Files Revisited. It's a new season. You alright, Brian?
Yeah. So it's just,
The man in Lewis.
so I just for those who have got no clue what's going on right now, I just had a bit of a faux pas at the start. I was recording this, but anyway, swiftly moving on.
Yes. As you can see, we're right back into the swing of things, professional as always. We are returning with the X-Files Revisited Season 5. We've had a nice break. We are back enthused and ready to talk more about Mulder and Scully and their adventures. Although, when we last left it, Brian, Scully's dying of cancer and Mulder was dead. So,
Yep.
it's kind of possibilities are endless of
Yeah.
who's going to go here. So tell me a little bit about the legacy of Redux.
Yeah, it's it's mythology episode, and it kind of it almost set the X-Files off into a different direction for quite a while, because we've kind of twisted Mulder's belief system. Really, we've gone through essentially a crisis of faith for Mulder, because Mulder's always been aliens exist. I believe in aliens. That's the truth. I've got to search for it. And now he has to contend with the possibility that actually everything he believed in was a lie orchestrated by the government in order to distract the populace from what they're actually doing. Which, in many ways, I prefer that angle to the notion that, aliens exist. And I feel like that's one that's more realistic, I guess, to me. When you think about the world we live in and the lies that governments tell, it feels a lot more, I guess, worth exploring than the notion that there is genuine aliens coming and stuff. But so that's really what it's all about. I mean, this whole three-parter really is all about faith, whatever it is you put your faith in, and the crisis that comes with any belief when it's kind of knocked or whatever. So I think it sets up the season for a new direction, I think, in a good way, I would say. So I think the question is, how will the season going forward deal with this kind of new turn? Because obviously, well, I mean, I won't go into it too much because we're not at Redux Part 2 yet, but I think that's where it's heading.
Shall we go on with our usual guessing game, Brian?
Yes, indeedy. So 217 episodes, IMDb ranking. Where do you think this sits?
Okay, I think the fact that Mulder's, spoiler, not dead, and I think that it's a season starter and it's a fairly solid one. I think it's going to be somewhere up there. I'm going to go for 42.
42, eh? X-Files audiences like it a little bit more than that. They went with 29.
29. Wow.
Yes. Okay.
I just think that after such the downer at the end of war, just the relief of this episode, pushes it up there maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's dive into it.
Right. Let's go. So we open up after having a brief recap of what happened last season, with Critchgow calling Mulder to tell him that they may be watching. Mulder sees the camera in his ceiling and goes upstairs to find a man burning evidence. We hear gunshot and then the door closes. Who has shot who?
Yeah, it's the question that's really on nobody's lips, because we know the answer to this one.
Yeah, obviously.
It's one of those openings where you're instantly relieved because you know Mulder's alive, but you're already ahead of the episode because you know what he's going to do.
Yeah.
You know he's dragging that body down there and it's going to be him. So
Yeah.
it's a kind of comforting, entertaining start. Mulder's alive, hoorah, but we're already a little bit ahead of this story. So
the question is, though, before being interrupted, was he considering suicide as an option? because he does check his gun. He checks for a bullet. He's in tears. You can see he's clearly in a bit of a place of being lost kind of thing. And he does check that clip.
Yeah. You think a little bit of crisis of faith?
Yes, I do. I think there was a possible kind of... I think his train of thought was going down that line. Now, whether he would have done it or not is a different matter. I don't...
Without that divine intervention.
Yeah, without that divine intervention of seeing that actually there's something... There's still a reason to stay in the game here. I think he was definitely at a very low place, low enough to check how many rounds he had in his gun. So, yeah. Okay.
I'm with you.
So Scully gets home to find Mulder in her bedroom. I love how he waits just long enough for her to start taking her top off before indicating that he's there. He tells her about the man, Scott Osselhoff, that he shot in the face. The phone records show that Osselhoff had a direct line to someone within the FBI. And that's when Mulder proposes that they tell a lie to find the truth.
And again, I think if this episode had came straight after the ending ones, it'd be undercut because we just kind of watched that and we knew what's coming type of thing. But the space in between the episodes makes it not as in your face as that kind of recapping of the story. But I like this one. I also like just going back to the intro where it says all lies lead to the truth. Just a hint to it's a line that comes later on in the episode, I think. But they're kind of laying up the idea that someone is against them within their own group or just their superiors. And you can get that idea, but this is why they're having to cover things up. And it's all the way through this episode, there is a strong leaning towards Skinner, which, in my mind, I don't buy. I don't think he's the bad guy, but at the same time, he has that deal with Cancer Man. He's made that pact with the devil. So he's never 100% sure.
Yeah, so it's like it's not so much that you buy that it's his character, so much as that he's kind of caught between a rock and a hard place.
Yes.
And it's like he's spying on Mulder and Scully in order to try and save Scully. So so you never buy that his motives are bad, but you can. I think you can buy that he is being pushed into something he doesn't really want to do, which either way is quite upsetting. But yeah, so Scully goes to ID the body. She lies to Skinner. He tells her section chief Blevins wants a word with her about some evidence she hasn't come forward with. It's kind of like it's a moment where you're starting to see the distrust Scully's having, even towards Skinner. It's like, can she actually trust Skinner? And you'd think after everything they'd been through, she could. But yeah, there you go. So Mulder goes to the Department of Defense Advanced Research Facility where Osselhoff worked, because he's got Osselhoff's security card. Yeah. So not much more to it than that, really. It's just Mulder going into a building. Scully sees Blevins. He wants to know who it was from the Department of Defense that contacted Mulder. She's pressured into IDing Critchgow. Yes. And I don't know about you, but instantly I kind of felt like, well, that's him dead.
Pretty much, yeah.
You've just killed him, Scully.
I mean, if he's lucky, he'll barely have a moment for some exposition before he goes.
Yeah. Quite a bit of exposition, it seemed.
Yeah.
You could almost call this guy Basil.
Indeed.
So I do like the scene though, because I like,
Oh, I love it.
yeah,
I love the scene.
I like the way she's pressured into, like,
Oh,
because literally,
I'm talking about the exposition scene. I love the exposition.
oh yeah, that yeah. No, well, I do love that one as well, but no, just this scene in which she's trying really hard. There's a similar scene that'll come. I think it's in next episode where Mulder is in a similar kind of spot, but Mulder doesn't. He doesn't have the same kind of respect for authority that Scully has. So you can never twist Mulder. You can never kind of hold so unless it's like Scully's health, something like that. You can never get Mulder to say something that you want him to say if he doesn't want to say it. He's just like, "Are we done?"
Yeah. Whereas Scully, you can see the conflict between duty and loyalty.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so I think it's good that we see that from in this episode, and then, like as I say, in the next episode. But here it's like Skinner literally holds the photo of Critchgow, and then she's kind of caught with this. There's only so many lies I can tell. Yes, that is the man. But yeah, instantly I just think he's dead. So Critchgow at the Advanced Research Facility spots Mulder.
Yeah.
He goes down to have a chat with him. Like, what are you doing here? That kind of talking through gritted, smiley teeth. Yeah. What the hell are you doing here? So, yeah. Takes him to his office. Critchgow tells Mulder that the card he took from Osselhoff gives him level 4 clearance, which almost feels like a bit of a joke when he says it. It's like, you got level 4 clearance. So that's something you'd get from an Austin Powers kind of film. Something. He could find the cure to Scully's cancer. So it's like literally you've got access to everything.
Yeah.
So
carte blanche.
Yeah. So obviously Mulder's like, ding, dollar signs, but more in the sense that he's going to get Scully's cancer treatment. So the question is, at this point, do you buy a single word this guy says? Or do you think he's lying? Or do you think he's telling half-truths?
I believe him. I don't know why, because we've seen countless people, government agents, who are duplicitous in nature, but there's some reason about this guy that I just believe him.
Yeah. I think part of that, is helped by the choice of actor. I think if you cast the right part, you get someone who engenders trust, even when perhaps they shouldn't. But yeah, I think whoever this guy is, I can't remember his name, but I think they cast well. Props to the casting department for that. But Cancerman breaks into Mulder's apartment, cries over a photo of Mulder and his sister, before noticing the camera in the ceiling. Yeah. Thing is, who is Cancerman crying for? Because this is the thing. It's like they always do. If they do a scene like this, they all like in that photo is Mulder and Samantha. So he's not got a picture of Mulder and he starts crying. Nice performance by William B. Davis, by the way. Very very subtly done, just like that one single Denzel Washington tear falling.
I'll tell you what I keep going back to. I keep thinking about it because there is a question mark for me. And I'm like, could Mulder possibly be his son? Is he crying because he's lost his son? You know, he may not know. It could just be a possible type thing. But I like it. And there's also a moment where he looks up and sees the camera, and there's almost like a smile, like the beginning of a smile. Like, yeah, okay, like, yeah. So I don't know. I don't know, but I know we've had definitive answers from our mother and things like that, but there's still that questioning nature in there, I think, with people's actions, and particularly this, because of the single tear, because you're looking at a picture of Mulder and the body. I'm like, does he think maybe that he's the father?
Yeah. So Scully goes into the office, calls Holly. Don't know if you remember Holly.
No.
From the episode Pusher. So she was the one who beat the crap out of Skinner in Pusher.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I didn't remember that bit.
Yeah, that's her. So
that's good. She's still got a job.
She's still got a job. She didn't look like she was in the same place.
No.
Demoted. So she calls Holly to have her trace the calls that Ozzelhoff made. They were received by someone in the executive branch, possibly Skinner. So we're getting closer here. We now know that it's not just someone in the FBI, but it's someone in the executive branch of the FBI, so someone pretty high up. The doctor investigating the ice core samples calls Scully to ask her to come down and see what he's found.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun.
And again, I'm like, is she going to turn up and this guy's dead and the samples are gone? Yeah.
So Krichgau gives Mulder a history lesson. Tells him he's helping him not out of purely unselfish reasons. He wants a cure for his son's cancer. And then he's arrested when him and Mulder split up. So this is the big Basil exposition sequence. We get loads of like newsreel footage with this voiceover from Krichgau as they're walking down corridor after corridor. And it's a lot to take in. Like I've taken it in a few times now, so I'm pretty much I can glean from it the important stuff we need to take away from it. But I imagine if you're watching this as a first time viewer, you're like, oh man, it's loads of information. Which bits am I supposed to keep in my head? Which bits are not that vital? And so I would imagine it'd be quite an information dump, I would say.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I thought it was a fantastic sequence because it is like lots of exposition, but it's delivered in such a way where you feel as if you're literally hearing something you shouldn't be, a part of a secret conversation. You're like, okay, come and listen to this, and all this information. It's like, I've got limited time. I need to hit you with the bullet points. You get all this like visual imagery over it type thing. It's just, it's wonderfully constructed, and it's a long sequence for what it is. And I just feel like it's the best sort of exposition that I think I've seen done. Where you know exactly what it is, but it's entertaining, it's thought-provoking, and it's full of like little bits of cool information. I love this walk and talk.
Yeah, and I love that it's rooted in history as well.
Yeah.
So he's constantly bringing up actual events, actual dates, things that certainly people who've been watching the X-Files up until this point will know about. Roswell and all that. So yeah, it's just it. What it does is it helps ground the mythology.
Yeah.
And the mythologies are always felt pretty grounded anyway, because the X-Files on the whole has felt like a pretty grounded show. That's something they've always done really well. But this exposition here really brings it down to earth, really makes it feel like a possibility, like this could be real. There's nothing that he says that you couldn't imagine being true. When it's told through the lens of this, aliens don't really exist. It's more that it's a government conspiracy to distract people from the truth. So, I like it. So, Cancerman meets the syndicate member whose name I can never remember. Not that they have names. It's always like some random something or other man. But it's the portly man with he talks like the Godfather. Proper Sicilian mobster or whatever. But so he goes to see him at a racetrack, and Cancerman is not happy about not being told that Mulder had surveillance on him. So clearly here we are seeing that Cancerman is definitely becoming something of an outcast within the syndicate, where now they're not even bothering to inform him as to what they're up to. And I think this has been like a slow, steady decline ever since the end of season 2 when he lost the DAT tape. But yeah, it's gotten to the point now where they're running operations without even talking to him. So
there's a line he says that I kind of pondered over, and it's just I created Mulder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that literal, or is that yeah?
Which I kind of like that kind of statement. The idea that he's, for someone that seems so adversarial and always trying to stop Mulder, it seems strange that he's put him on this path. Like, what has he done to create him? Was he involved with Samantha's abduction? Did he actually create Mulder? Did he shape him on this path some other way? Like, there's so many connotations to that little 3-word sentence.
Yeah, it's like Mulder believes that he's ended up in the X-Files because that's the path he chose. But how many things in his life directed him and put him on to that path until eventually it seemed like the obvious choice, and who was behind that. So yeah, it's interesting, and it is, again, X-Files, when the writing on the show is at its best, anything that is said can be taken at least one of two ways, which is great, because it means you never actually truly have to explain anything, and you can have multiple choice answers. So the Doctor tells Scully that when he divided the cells from the tissue in the ice core samples, some of them began to grow into a new life form.
Yeah. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. What do you think it's growing into?
I have no idea. Like, at all. Like, what exactly constitutes a new life form? Like, is it just a various grouping of cells that just start to grow? Is it going to jump into some kind of virus? Is it going to go into some giant alien hybrid thing? I have literally no idea.
Because I don't feel like they ever really carry that on. Like, they never sit with it in a lab and say, okay, let's see this thing through to its completion. Where is it going? But
yeah,
certainly at this point, it's some kind of viral thing, because obviously they do some work on it later. But so Mulder sneaks into a room to get away from some guards and discovers tons of alien bodies.
Now, hang on. Of all the doors in this hallway that he is going down, why is it this one? Like, it's crazy that he picks the one that's just, I mean, are all these rooms filled like this? Or is this just a lucky?
I think they are. I think any of those rooms that you go into, you're going to find something that's going to make you go, holy crap. And also, that room that he goes into with the alien bodies, it seems really long. So I'd imagine some of the doors he's already gone past down the corridor would go into that same room just from a different access point. But
why would you even have that?
But to me, the question is, are these bodies actually alien bodies, or are they just more alien hoax bodies that have been manufactured, which are going to be used at various points? To
a hell of a lot of them.
It is, yeah. Like, with the amount of them, you'd expect there to be like people claiming to see alien bodies left, right, and centre and stuff. Oh, I saw. Yeah. So, but which again kind of would lead you to suspect that the alien body that they built is a misdirection, so that when Mulder does see something like this, he doesn't take it in for what it actually is, which is genuine alien bodies.
Yeah.
So
I've got a little note here. Just when Mulder's going down the hallway and he's trying the various doors, it has this voiceover narration that he's talking about, and it feels almost like an old film noir, the way he's kind of talking
Yeah.
about the situation, and the possibilities, and it's kind of mirrored later on because we get a Scully sequence where she's doing the voiceover as well. It's just it's not something that's used particularly much in the X-Files, but I kind of liked it.
Yeah. It's kind of gives you an insight into how they're perceiving everything that's going on, or certainly how it's affecting their worldview at this particular moment in time. So further in, he sees women on tables with pregnant-looking bellies, looking very similar to how Scully looked when she was abducted and had her flashbacks to it. So, what's going on, man?
Yeah.
So Scully has the doctor take her blood. She wants him to test it against the virus sample now growing from the ice core. She's looking for a match, says everything in her life depends on it. She sees Skinner looking in from outside. So, yeah, she's hoping to find some kind of link between that and herself and what happened to her. So she goes outside and she confronts Skinner in quite a hard scene to watch, really. It's hard for me to see Scully being so distrusting of Skinner.
Yeah.
Because it feels like they've been through so much at this point, and Skinner's done so much to prove himself at this point, that Skinner being at such loggerheads with him, it's like, it's like watching your mum and dad kind of falling out.
I get that.
So, yeah, who's going to get Mulder in the divorce? That's the question. So, she accuses him of being a liar. He wants to know why she is lying about the dead man in Mulder's apartment, that pathology has now revealed to not, in fact, be Mulder.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, so basically they both, well, she feels he's lying. He knows she's lying. The question is he actually lying? And if so, what is he lying about? It's like I say, it's just a scene that builds a lot of intrigue. It's quite tense. It creates a divide between characters we don't want to see divided, and it's quite well written. So, anything to add on that?
No. I just everything you say is kind of spot on there. Again, it's like it's that. I think the whole Cancer Man conversation with Skinner has kind of skewed our perspective on Skinner a lot. Because we had that previously, but we always felt that he had their back. And now he's been altered in our perceptions because of that conversation.
Yeah, definitely. So Mulder gets into a large filing system inside the Pentagon that looks suspiciously familiar. If you remember the pilot episode in which Cancer Man put that little vial into that big kind of Indiana Jones-like room.
No, I forgot about that.
Do you not remember that? So he did it.
No, you say it.
Yeah. So he did it at the end of the pilot episode, and he also did it at the end of Erlenmeyer Flask. They kind of mirrored it at the end of the season, where he goes into that. It was like Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark thing, where there's that big room with all the government stuff that they store. But this, I'm pretty sure this is that room. Right. So Mulder gets into it, finds all these filing systems, and pulls out a card for both Scully and Krichgauer's son. So it's just a piece of card. It's like an index card. So
with a little reference number on it.
Yeah, a little reference number. So the security guard calls Cancer Man to present. Like, I don't know about you, but like, knowing who Mulder is, knowing what his quest has been about, and I totally get that actually right now his only concern is Scully, getting her cure. But it would be like sending me into the Batman archives filled with every piece of Batman memorabilia from the entire history of the character, and asking me to go in there and just get one particular item. Nothing else, just go in, find the item, and come back. It would be impossible for me.
Yeah.
So, where are we? So a security guard calls Cancerman to inform him that Ozzelhoff is in the building.
Yeah. Which I kind of like. And you can see Smoking Man almost confirming his thoughts. Like, he does so much with so little, doesn't he? And for like such a stoic face, you can really read what he's almost thinking at certain points.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it always helps when somebody's got an older kind of lived in, almost dare I say, scraggly face.
And I don't know if it's like his acting or if I'm projecting, but like, I feel like there's a lot coming from him.
Yeah, definitely. So because he's got to. Most of what Cancerman does, he has to do without words, because he does say very little as far as characters go. Most of his scenes are him just kind of standing over someone's shoulder, smoking his cigarette, and he's developed a unique ability to smoke his cigarette in a multitude of ways that convey whatever emotional he wants to convey. So, yeah. Scully does some science is all I put for that, because she gives some science speak, and I'm just like, science. She sciences the crap out of it. Voiceover talks about how much she depends on science to get her through, but admits it may not be able to save her, which I think is a key ingredient of this episode with regards to her journey in it. It's kind of a turning point for her, I think, a big turning point for her character, which we'll get into in a much bigger way next episode. So So she finds that her blood matches the chimera cells. Just before I continue with that, it is something that does make me love this three-parter a lot more. Is going back, and you know, we've said many times before, this is something I often find going back and doing notes on it. It makes me, like, if you'd have asked me, like, before we started, like, season 4, whatever, what about Redux? What's that going to be like? I'd be like, hey, yes, it's a good, solid mythology one, but probably not one of my favourites. But now, like, coming to it, making notes, there's so many. It's just really well written. Like, they know what their character arcs are, and they're able to set up things in ways that if you just watch it without taking everything in, you can miss it, and therefore miss the point, really. But when you come back, you see that, oh no, they were that thing that we get at the end of the next episode or whatever. They're setting that up throughout. You know, even in Gethsemane, we had that whole conversation with Mulder and Scully about faith and crisis of faith and this, that, and the other. And then here we get Scully realizing the thing that she holds on to, science, may not be enough to save her. So again, that's a follow through from Gethsemane, and it will be followed up on in the next one. I just think it's really great writing that can go overlooked just because it's a quick line of dialogue in a voiceover.
Well, yeah, it's the thing of doing this show. Like, we've both seen the X-Files. For me, I think I've seen maybe up to season 5, because I saw up to the movie release.
Right.
So I have seen it, but I don't remember the sort of later seasons so much, because 1, 2, and 3 were the ones I watched the most. But when I watched them, I was watching them for entertainment purposes. I was engaged with the story and I enjoyed them. But doing this, we're sitting down and analysing them, going, well, what does that scene mean? Where does that tie into things? You know, it's a different level of watching, I think, what we're doing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Which I think gleans more from it. You know,
Yeah.
really, when you're starting to look for little connections and familiar through lines, which is probably why we're harsher on some episodes than normally would be, because they don't offer much.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was just going to say it does work both ways, because there are episodes where, because you watched them for entertainment, there's stuff in there that is genuinely entertaining. But actually, when you dig deep, you realise it's not that much on the surface besides that. So, yeah, but it's interesting. It does make me appreciate the show a lot more. So, she finds that her blood... I'm in the right one here. Yeah. So Scully finds that her blood matches the chimera cells from the ice, showing that whoever created the chimera cells was also responsible for abducting her and giving her cancer. Yeah. So, which doesn't feel like a huge revelation to me.
No, we kind of knew that was happening.
It's a confirmation for the character anyway. So Mulder finds some vials using the index cards. So, yeah. Are they the cure? That's the question. He pulls these vials out.
Yeah.
It's like,
there's quite a lot of them, really.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, like, did you see how many of the cards there were? Index cards. It's like, what on earth? So, but like, one can assume they don't have a vial for every single one of them cards, because I can't imagine they won't have abducted everyone that's on those cards. That's just a reference for everyone they've taken like blood tests from. But as Mulder tries to get out of the Pentagon, Scully faces an FBI hearing. She tells them she has undeniable scientific proof that what Kritschgau was saying was true. I can't read my own writing. That her cancer was given to her. Then her nose bleeds and she faints. Just on cue. Just as she's about to give her evidence. Boom. She hits the deck. So Skinner kind of grabs her, and there's this like little moment where she looks at him and he's like, you. And it's like, you what? You what? Are you going to say you bastard, or you? I'm sorry. I doubted you, or what? What were you going to say? So, but it looks and
the whole time it's terrible. The whole time this is happening, I'm like, someone grab that evidence.
Yeah. So Mulder has the lone gunman test the contents of the vials he took from the Pentagon, and it turns out to be nothing more than deionized water. To be continued.
Yeah, I'm thinking, like, do they have the facilities to find out if they're... I mean, do they just know it's deionized water? Could that be the key to the solution? Have they just not got the facilities to test for something more abnormal than that? Like, I just... Like, I'm like, why would they have deionized water where it was?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? It just seems like a bit far-fetched. So, to be continued.
Yeah.
Dang
it. So, do you want to give your wrap-up thoughts and your score?
Sure. I like this episode a lot. I think it's a much stronger opening than Herrenvolk. I think it just so. But what I'm a little bit wary of, it's the middle part of a 3-part story, and I'm always wary about, because these episodes, although they're good, could fall flat depending on how the next episode is. If the next episode's great, this one's elevated even more.
Yeah.
I think we get a solid story. I think we get a nice through line of faith and trust throughout it. There's the trust of people that you intimately trust, like Mulder and Scully's relationship. You've got the breaking of trust between Skinner and Scully all the way through it. I think Scully's arc of the cancer is really good. She, she almost has acceptance, the stages of grief. She has acceptance throughout this one that there's nothing she can do that's going to stop this. It's inevitable. And then after that, she has the anger of what has been done to her just at the end. I think if you look through most of these episodes, she's probably going through the stages of grief really, interestingly. I love the walk and talk. I really do. It's exposition, but it's a wonderful sequence. Like, it just really is. It's full of exposition, but it's really interesting and pertinent exposition, delivered in a fun way. I like the side story of Cancer Man, how he's sidelined, but he's still almost a step ahead of everyone, I think, especially when it comes to Mulder. And I really like this one. I don't know how to rate it. Like I said, because I haven't seen the next episode. I think I'll go with a solid 4.5 on this one as an opener. I feel it's a really good, interesting opener. And I'm really curious about Redux Part 2.
Yeah, I did give it a 4.5. And that, a lot of that is because it doesn't really have a beginning or an end. It's like Lord of the Rings, It's like you're kind of stuck in this limbo of having nothing really being truly set up and nothing really being concluded. It's all tie-overs from previously and building up to what's coming next. So I did give it a 4.5. I have seen Redux Part 2.
Okay.
So I am ready for recording our next episode when you are. But based on Redux Part 2, I am tempted to bump this up to a 5.
Okay.
So...
You will.
There isn't really any, like, other than the fact that, it's a middle chapter, I don't really have any gripes about it. There's nothing in it that makes me go, that's stupid, or, oh, don't buy that, or they're stretching a bit there, aren't they? I think it's really well handled. So yeah, I'm going to bump it up to a 5.
And I'll tell you what, the as a mythology episode, it feels pertinent to the larger overarching story. It's including all the parts that we kind of want. Yeah. And I think it's better than any of the previous season 4 mythology episodes. Because it's not a standalone mythology episode like, say, Tempest Future Max type thing.
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah. That's contained. That doesn't have an impact on everything else.
Yeah. I think Memento Mori gives it a run for its money. But other than that, I agree. Yeah. It's definitely better than any other mythology episode from season 4.
And if Redux Part 2 sticks the landing, I think it's going to be a really strong start to the season, which is interesting. Yeah. So you said you've seen it. Give me a little taste of what I can expect with Redux Part 2.
I just think it does a really good job of paying off certain things. Like, I think that both Mulder and Scully, across the course of Gethsemane, Redux, and Redux 2, have a character arc. Mm-hmm. They start in Gethsemane one way, and by the time they get to the end of Redux Part 2, they're in another way, essentially. Which, for episodic television like this, isn't generally the rule. You start at the status quo, you rough up that status quo, and then you get back to the status quo by the end, so that next week we come back and with the same characters. And essentially they do come back the following week, and they are essentially doing the same thing. But you do feel that there's a tectonic shift in the way these two characters now think. Which isn't something you often see. I think you do now, but that's because of how X-Files shaped television as a whole. But I think around this time, that's what episodic television was like. Status quo, conflict, status quo. I think there's other payoffs as well, not just for Mulder and Scully's characters. But I just think it is one of the one of the better ones as far as mythology goes, with regards to feeling like a quite a solid arc, a solid wrap up of everything that's going on. So, yeah.
Okay, so you can join us next episode where we discuss Redux Part 2. If you are listening on whichever podcast service you use, if you want to drop us a review, that would be fantastic. It allows other people to join the conversation and expand our show. If you're watching on YouTube, please like, subscribe, share. Again, we get more comments and that gives us more interaction with X-Files fans, which is what we want more than anything. So we appreciate you for watching, listening, and we'll see you next week for Redux Part 2.